It's Monday, April 21st. The People's Pope, Pope Francis, has died at the age of 88, embraced for his humility and non-traditional approach to leading the Catholic Church.
I was here yesterday at Mass, and I saw the Pope, and he looked just so fragile, you know?
Grief and remembrance. Visitors to the Vatican are in shock as they respond to the news of the Pope's passing. And we've had a reaction from around the world. Pope Francis always had the attention of world leaders, many of them paying tribute this morning. And final address, the Pope's final public appearance coming on the most important day of the Catholic calendar. He briefly spoke to the tens of thousands of people in St. Peter's Square for Easter Sunday. Stay with us, Canada. Your morning starts right now. Good morning, Canada, and welcome to Your Morning. I'm Anne-Marie Mediwake.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Lindsey Deluce.
And I'm Kelsey McEwen.
Obviously, we were following breaking news this morning. Quite a shock to wake up to. Faithful around the world marked Easter Monday today as the Vatican has announced Pope Francis has died at the age of 88.
Devo annunciare la morte del nostro Santo Padre Francesco.
So that was the statement read out by Cardinal Kevin Farrell. It says, at 7:35 this morning, the Bishop of Rome, Francis, returned to the house of the Father. His entire life was dedicated to the service of the Lord and his church. An earlier Vatican statement said Pope Francis died at his residence at Casa Santa Marta. It was about a month ago that Pope Francis left hospital after a 5-week stay recovering from double pneumonia. His death now sets off the tradition of the papal funeral and the selection of the next pope. The election of Jorge Mario Bergoglio as the new Bishop of Rome was a surprise.
Fratelli e sorelle, buonasera.
The last papal conclave came after the shocking resignation of Pope Benedict XVI in 2013, the first resignation of a pope in 600 years. Cardinal Bergoglio from Argentina was not a frontrunner. He was a Jesuit from the Americas. It took 5 ballots before white smoke came from the Vatican chimney. Jorge Bergoglio was born in Buenos Aires, the oldest of 5 children. His parents had immigrated from Italy, escaping Mussolini in 1929. He became a Jesuit priest in the 60s. Building a reputation of humility and service.
Sembra che I miei fratelli cardinali sono andati a prenderlo quasi alla fine del mondo, ma siamo qui.
When he was chosen to lead the world's 1.2 billion Catholics in 2013, he chose his papal name in honor of St. Francis of Assisi. He's credited with changing the papacy, choosing simplicity and austerity, making a Vatican guest house his home instead of living in the apostolic palace like his predecessors. Francis also opened the church to conversations and debate, criticizing capitalism, defending migrants, and embracing environmentalism.
The Pope's words today were historic.
In 2022, he met with a delegation of Indigenous leaders and accepted an invitation to come to Canada, apologizing for the role of the Catholic Church in Canada's residential school system and the cultural genocide of Indigenous peoples.
If you look at all what transpired here yesterday, today, Rome, it was the achievement of an impossible dream.
Pope Francis has said his goal is to leave a legacy of inclusion and reform in the Catholic Church. His last instructions: he will be buried not at the Vatican, but at Santa Maria Maggiore in a simple funeral that reflects the faith of any Christian, not of a powerful man of this world. course, in the western part of the world, people are just waking up to this news. It's happening just less than a couple of hours ago.
Yeah.
We want to take you live to St. Peter's Square. This is where people are gathering. Of course, the Pope just giving his last address at the end of Holy Week, which is, it's just remarkable when you think about the timing of his passing. And it's Easter Monday today. And for the thousands of faithful that are there and more that are coming, many of them who'd been there to hear him give that last blessing, it's quite a thing to be able to return there today to now grieve.
Yeah, absolutely. We're seeing the square fill up a little bit more over the last, we've been watching the shot over the last little while. Obviously, people coming there to pay their respects, to mourn, to be with other people in a time like this, right? Have you ever been to St. Peter's Square? This is a it's absolutely spectacular when you go. I had the chance to go a couple of years ago, and just the feeling when you're there of how grand everything is. But what's really important, and I say that because one of the areas that people are talking about this morning, of course, is a couple of things. One, the compassion that Pope Francis had, but also the fact that when he became Pope, he rejected a lot of that opulence, right? He decided not to live in...
the papal quarters.
That's right. So he preferred something something quite small. He rejected all of the sort of the robes and all of the other... attire that other previous popes had worn. He opted for like the basic black shoe and the papal dressing that he wore. So
Even if you go back to the night of his election, he opted for a bus back to his hotel with the cardinals rather than being driven in the official car.
And paid for his hotel. That was another marker that sort of said this Pope is going to be different and he's going to do things differently.
Well, we obviously are hearing reaction from all over the world, so I want to bring our viewers some of that. World leaders paying tribute to Pope Francis this morning upon hearing his news, the news of his death, of course. French President Emmanuel Macron was one of the first leaders to respond with an online post calling Pope Francis, quote, a man of humility on the side of the most vulnerable and the most fragile. Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni writes, his teaching and his legacy will not be lost. We greet the Holy Father with hearts full of sadness, but we know that he is now in the peace of the Lord. EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen pays tribute by saying this, quote, he inspired millions far beyond the Catholic Church with his humility and love so pure for the less fortunate. And U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance, who we know met briefly with the Pope yesterday, released this statement just a short time ago saying, I just learned of the passing of Pope Francis. My heart goes out to the millions of Christians all over the world who loved him. Now, the Pope's final public appearance was in St. Peter's Square yesterday for the Easter Sunday blessing. So that was the moment there. He waved from the balcony to the crowds. You can hear him there. And he said simply, dear brothers and sisters, happy Easter. His traditional address and blessing was read by an aide as he watched on. After Sunday's blessing, he was driven around the square, his procession pausing a number of times as small children, babies, brought to him to bless. So we, of course, will continue to follow reaction from all over the world of the passing of Pope Francis this morning. In other news today, there is now 1 week to go until the federal election and one more day to go to vote in advance polls.
It's an important vote, so I thought we really want to make sure that we do this.
Elections Canada says a record 2 million people showed up to vote on Friday. Just on Friday, 2 million people. The first of 4 days of advanced polls. Advanced voting closes tomorrow. That's when we will know the total number of people that voted early. To give you some context, to compare, during the last federal election, a total of 5.8 million people voted in advance polls. And party leaders are pushing hard for votes with Election Day 1 week away.
I will axe the inflation tax. We will do this by cutting waste, capping spending, reducing deficits, taxes, and inflation.
Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre promised to cut government spending on consultants. The Conservatives still haven't released a fully costed platform yet. The party says it is coming, though.
You need the government to step up and lead when the private sector is retreating under anxiety and uncertainty.
Liberal leader Mark Carney held a rally in the Nepean riding where he's running. He talked about the Liberal platform released over the weekend. It calls for $130 billion in new spending and a balanced operating budget in 3 years.
If you're worried about Conservatives and you're worried about them getting in, vote for a New Democrat to beat Conservatives. Here on the island, that's who beats Conservatives.
The NDP is in a tough fight to hold on to their seats on Vancouver Island. Leader Jagmeet Singh is pushing a message for strategic voting, suggesting a vote for the Liberals will end up turning orange seats into blue. Workers at Windsor's Stellantis assembly plant are back on the job this morning for at least 2 weeks. This comes after a 2-week shutdown, as we know, brought on because of Donald Trump's 25% auto tariff. Unifor Local 444 says production is scheduled to start up again this week and next week, but the company hasn't made any decisions beyond that. The shutdown has affected about 3,500 workers at the plant and thousands more workers at other feeder and parts plants. Work start up there at those plants again this week as well. DHL has started pausing some deliveries to the U.S. today because of red tape caused by the tariffs.
This company is saying that's now an extra cost for us, so you know what? We're out of that business.
The suspension affects deliveries worth more than $800 U.S. DHL says the pause will remain in effect until further notice. Excuse me. This applies only to consumer deliveries for now. Business-to-business shipments will still go ahead, although DHL says they may face delays. On May 2nd, the U.S. will start clamping down on deliveries under $800 sent from China and Hong Kong. Okay, let's talk NHL playoffs because it was all Leafs in Game 1 of the first playoff battle of Ontario in 21 years.
Tavares wins the draw, and Nylander steps into the slot and scores!
William Nylander and John Tavares each had a goal and an assist. Mitch Marner had a goal and 2 assists as the Leafs beat the Sens 6-2 in Game 1 of their first round series. Undisciplined play from Ottawa cost them. The Leafs scoring 3 power play goals. Game 2, by the way, goes tomorrow night in Toronto. Meanwhile, the Oilers and Canadiens both play their opening games of the playoffs tonight, while the Jets and Blues play Game 2.